Hey there, my name's Wolfster and welcome to Is the Human Race About to Mature? And episode 17, The Beginning of Life on Earth. In episodes 13 to 16, I've spoken of the beginning of matter, the beginning of life. I've spoken about time and gravity, the first stars and planets that developed, and the beginning of life as we understand it a bit better, and that's both of vegetation and animal life, and also mineral life, which is in the planets and the stars. These are all life forms. But now what I'm going to do in episode 17, I'm going to take a leap forward. I'm missing out on some really juicy things that have happened as the universe expanded, as it continued to multiply, and one galaxy became two galaxies, and then now we have literally thousands, millions of galaxies, billions of galaxies in our universe. So I'm leaping forward now to more closer to us, a time of that we can relate to a lot more. I'm starting at the beginning of our star, which was once traveling around a parent planet as a gas giant, taking moons. It grew into density, grew in size and density, moved away, combusted into a star, and some of the debris and energy formed, instead of the moons, they formed into planets. And that is the star that we call our sun. And one of those planets is our mother, the Earth. Now, at first, the Earth was uninhabitable, as we know. We know it was. It took a long time, but it was totally uninhabitable. It was very much the same as today when we look in our telescopes, particularly the James Webb telescope that we've got now, or even the Hubble telescope was pretty good. But we can see what we call exoplanets that really don't have the ability to form life. Our planet was like that, and she could not awaken properly to develop life. Now, what happened was one of the benevolent, very ancient civilizations came here to our planet as a helper and manipulated our planet into the perfect position, brought possibly what may have been a very small planet, maybe in our Kuiper belt, brought that into orbit with our Earth, possibly engineered it so that it became our moon. And that all created balance and harmony. The Earth was able to rotate. She was able to she was able to have liquid water, all the things necessary for life. So that was done by a very, very old race that came here. Some call them the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them. They came here and they made it possible for our Earth to awaken. And she began to, first of all, form plant life, grasses, bushes, trees. And then she brought life, as in animal life, fish, birds, four-legged ones. The way she does that is what I've used this once before actually. She creates orbs. Now, orbs are kind of like the hands that a planet uses to create with. We see them actually sometimes because she also uses them in healing. Sometimes we see them in the sky because she's healing things in the atmosphere, and they appear and are thought of as UFOs or what they call it, unidentified phenomena now, I think it is. But sometimes they're just orbs that belong to the Earth. But I will say, sometimes, not every time. Anyway, the Earth produces these orbs. So to start with, I've used this for the beginning of the humans. But to start with, there would have been vegetation in these. The first plants, the first grasses, the first trees would have been inside these orbs. And then as it continued, the first of the animals would have been created in this same way. Eventually, it gets to us. Yeah, us. So that's how the Earth brings forth life upon her surface. So at this point, when the Earth is experimenting with herself, I guess, the original helpers, I think that's the nicest way to, our benevolent helpers that assisted the Earth to awaken, they realized that the Earth has to work things out now for herself, because it's very, very important that we don't have the whole universe being a clone of each other, all being the same. It's just as we are all individuals, our race is an individual, each planet, each galaxy is an individual galaxy. Everywhere is different. And that's because the universe just loves variety. It hungers for new information to be fed into the matrix, to the collective consciousness. It hungers for new information, new experiences. And so it's vital for each planet that develops to actually have the chance to develop its own personality. And so to make sure that that happens, our original helpers at that point departed. Went back home, wherever they went, maybe on to the next one that they helped. Now, what happened from then on, the Earth began to experiment with herself, trying out different vegetation, different animal life. Sometimes she would get to the stage where she would make minor changes and wipe out certain ones but keep others. Sometimes she even gets to the point of saying, well, back to the drawing board. I need to redo it all. And this is what happens with the dinosaurs. She realized that there was no way that she would be able to produce a fruit on her surface or a species on her surface that would one day be able to go out to the stars with this model she's got of dinosaurs. So the Earth literally changed her mind. Now, it can be quite catastrophic when people change their minds. But when the Earth changes her mind dramatically, then we call that an extinction event. And that's what happened to the dinosaurs. Yes, asteroids, meteors do crash into the Earth from time to time. They still do. Smaller ones, they still do. But it wasn't an asteroid or a meteor that crashed. It was actually the Earth deciding she needed to start again. So that's what happened to the dinosaurs. Now, as time went by, the Earth got it right eventually. She got it right where she had all this beautiful vegetation. She had the animals that we know more today. And it was now time for her to bring forth those that would be her fruit. Just like a tree, it puts forth bark, it puts food, it has its roots, it has its trunk, it has its branches, has its leaves. But eventually, and usually the last thing it produces is its fruit. And the fruit contains the seed, which gives you a clue of why and our purpose to spread the seed. So the Earth got to this point, and this is where I come to my illustration here. 24, I've only got 4 here, but imagine it around this big oak tree. 24 humanoids or biological humans came into existence. Now, unlike animals that are born not with eternal spirits, they're born with temporary lifespans. Unlike them, the humans, us, we have this desire for eternity. We have it in us, don't we? We never actually want to die unless we're suffering in some way. But if everything's going well, it's not natural for us to die. And this is where the fear of death comes from as well. So these original humans, there were, I believe, 24 of them, in keeping with the number 24, which exists throughout the universe. It's a very symbolic number. These the first 24 humans, biological humans, just woke up. They're encapsulated in spirit, but they wouldn't see their spirit. They were just adults, adult-size babies. So physically mature, but they didn't know how to talk. They didn't know what to do. They could possibly see the other animals. And I'll focus a little bit on that the purpose of animal life is actually to be our tutor. We can learn so much from the bees and the birds and the animals, the way everything works. We can learn so much from them. We can learn from the ants, industriousness. We can even learn from the snakes how to be cautious. Everything gives us lessons. It's kind of like the handbook that Earth gives us. But that's their role. But now going back to the first humans, they would have been like babies, not knowing anything, not knowing who they were, anything. So at this time, that advanced, highly advanced race that came many, possibly millions of years before, returned. and helped us to develop. So they taught us how to speak, how to live, how to be with each other, how to develop a society. They taught us all the benevolent ways that one day we need to get to. They taught us how to connect with each other, how to connect and to live in harmony with our mother, and live in harmony, in fact, with the whole universe. This time is the time that some call the time of Lemuria. Lemuria. It was a time in our very, very early human history where we almost had a utopian society. It's probably where some manuscripts, some religious texts call the time of Eden, Garden of Eden. But I prefer to call it Lemuria. Lemuria wasn't so much about being a place, but it was about a time when we were looked after by our older race, nurtured, almost like a baby is nurtured and helped to develop. And this was a beautiful time. Now, also, as I've just mentioned earlier, everything has to develop according to its own personality, its own individuality. Now, if this time had continued and our benevolent, this benevolent race that came to the earth and helped the earth first of all, and then later helped us, if they'd have just stayed here, then we wouldn't have learned much. We would have learned how to have a perfect society, but we wouldn't have developed our own character. We wouldn't have developed our own personality as a race. So it would have just been a carbon copy of them. And that cannot be allowed to happen. So again, once this race helped us out, gave us a really good start, they had to depart again. And when they departed, as I have said, some other more mature races than us, but not so developed as some of this race that came here and helped us, they were allowed to use areas that weren't populated by us to create colonies where some that these races had spirits on them that hadn't yet got to the stage of spiritual maturity. So they needed biological bodies. They came here as well and created colonies away from us. The earth allowed that because the earth knows that one day we are going to need to do the same thing somewhere else. So the earth allowed that to take place. Now, because the original very benevolent, very, very advanced race had left, these races were visiting us and actually they needed biological bodies for their spirits that belong to their race to reincarnate into. So they were similar to us in DNA. However, they were genetically modified by their races so that they would have bodies a bit more that they could relate to in their own race. This is why we have many mythologies in our legends about giants of old. I think some scriptures call them the Nephilim. These were individuals from other races, more advanced, much more advanced than us, nowhere near as advanced as our original helper, but they were using colonies throughout the earth to assist those that belonged to their race to spiritually mature and then could move on and to be with their race once they'd spiritually matured. But they needed these colonies, and Earth was used for that. Now, during the time of Lemuria, some of our race, some individuals, not the whole race, and by the way, our race was probably only about maybe hundreds of thousands or maybe 1 million at the time. We were certainly nowhere near the population we have now. We were almost virtually confined into one place, but some actually decided to explore other places. The red people, we were, as we developed, something I haven't mentioned, but we did develop into tribes. The red tribe, a yellow tribe, a black tribe, and a white tribe. And this was probably to do with our skin colour. I think the red people would have been very red. The white people possibly were much whiter than we are now. Probably if you saw one of those now, you'd rush them to the hospital. The yellow people were likely much more yellow. So you'd think they got jaundice or something back in those days. And the black people would have been very dark, as some African people are today. So these 4 races, not all of them, we still maintained a space in around a central location, but many of these actually explored the north, south, east and west of our mother. And some of these came into contact with these alien colonies and were amazed at the technology that they had, and that was then some of them returned and actually passed on this technology to our race, technology that was way more advanced than what we were capable of understanding or being able to use properly. So it became misused. Now, what happened then? The Earth, as I've said, sometimes has to step in. So she caused what we know as the Younger Dryas, an ice age. It wasn't a complete covering of the Earth, but the ice came down, and we do call it the Ice Age or the Younger Dryas, which forced many of the white people that had settled in the north to come down and amalgamate into a warmer area. And this was still what we call Lemuria. But with still with people, some of the tribes still a bit scattered. Now, when all this came down, it was okay for quite a while. We survived, but we had these technologies. Now, this is the time of Atlantis. So I've gone from the Lemuria now to the time of Atlantis. This was a basin that is pretty much in the middle of the earth, a place that now we call the Mediterranean Sea. But this was landlocked once. We know this to be the case, and it's been proven. So there was a land bridge between Spain and what's now called Morocco. And so the Mediterranean was just a deep basin. And it was a basin of warmth. It was warmer down there. And we continued for quite some time. We developed with both alien technology and some of our own learning. And we used crystals and many things, many technologies that we actually were not ready for. And slowly, that time became more corrupted, just like all the stories that we have from Atlantis. And it became a corrupt place. So the earth does what she always does. She's our mother. She disciplines us. She puts things right. When they're out of balance, when we're not developing the way we should, she makes changes. And what she did, as the ice then started to retreat, the sea levels rose up, and that land bridge between Morocco and Spain cracks developed in it. Eventually the oceans just gushed in and wiped away that bridge. Eventually then flooding what we call now, or what we used to call, Atlantis. So Atlantis was flooded, as we well know in all the stories about Atlantis. We know it went under the sea. It is located, it's not just one city. It wasn't just one city. It was actually more like a country with many cities. But just like Australia, for instance, and it's got many states and many different cities. But as a large on whole, we call it Australia. So this was Atlantis. But as the Atlantic Ocean flooded in, Atlantis was flooded. Those that lived on the exterior boundaries were able to go to higher land. But as the Atlantic came in to that huge area, it actually caused that seabed then to actually, the weight of all that water caused the seabed to sink even further. And then over the millenniums since then, it's all been covered up by silt as well. So that's what happened. And that took us into the time that we know a lot better. The remnants of human society, still with some in other places, like the red people in America, the black people down in Africa and Australia, and the yellow people, some of the yellow people in what we call China, Asia. They still existed, but the white people, actually knowing that they have many stories in there, because by this time now all these stories of when their ancestors were in the north before the ice came down, there would have been many legends, many myths There would have been probably stories about standing stones that were just legend, and they wanted to find out if they were real, if they existed. So the white people moved up into the north. And when they found these structures, they related them to their ancestors, and it became the basis of ancestral worship. So this is how it all got started. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there, because basically history books can take over from me there. Things that have been written, and we know we weren't this primitive. Forget Darwin's evolution idea. We were very advanced, but when Atlantis was flooded and we were separated, then it was like a complete new start. But we have got legends, we've got imprints encoded in us that we instinctively work to. And this actually began, this new society that we're in now, began the time of when we were, and we are still, working out our shadow personality. And that's, I'm going to just talk about this in the next episode, but it is a very important part. Not just seeing us as light beings, as love and light and purity, and everything is honky-dory. We also have to learn the lessons of things like hate, anger, fear, all of those, and they have to be overcome. So this period now that we call known history, maybe the last 6,000 years or more, this is a period of our race learning to deal with its shadow. So I'll leave it there, and please, as all YouTubers have to say, give me that like, share it if you can, if you want to, please do, because it's the only way I'm ever going to get this out there. And I'll see you again in my final episode, episode 18. Thank you. Bye for now.